Welcome back to the Halls of Mediocrity, and it is episode 5. And boy, have we got a topic for you. We are talking about a young man who was literally from the womb bred to be a premier athlete. And when you think about what I just said, bred from the womb, it is only natural that this individual would struggle, would be a nice way of saying it. We are talking about none other than Todd Marinovich. And Jeff, welcome, number one, but give us a glimpse into the story of Todd Marinovich.
Thanks, Kev. And I will tell you, Todd Marinovich, this is a crazy story. And a lot of people that are listening to this, they know who Todd Marinovich is. He was a superstar. He was a stud at USC, only played 2 years there. He played for the LA Raiders. I was surprised as we went through and we did all the research on this. He really only played 8 regular season games and 1 playoff game with the Raiders. So he really didn't play a long time with the Raiders. But what you said is 100% true, and it's actually mind-boggling. His dad, Marv Marinovich, you got to know Marv Marinovich to know Todd Marinovich, because Marv was an NFL player, played football at USC, only actually played 1 game with the Raiders, but he was a trainer. And his whole goal with Todd was to create a superstar athlete. That's where the name Robo QB came from. So let me go in here. I've got a little bit of just kind of a summarization of everything, talking about his early days. So Todd Marinovich, again, that's his dad, right? Todd, he was a strength and conditioning coach. He was an NFL lineman, only played 1 game, but he had one singular vision, Kev, creating the perfect athlete. Even before Todd was born, he was in the womb. And guess what Marv was doing? Old Marv Marinovich, he's out there getting them ready. Todd's mom was put on a strict diet. No processed food, no white sugar, no artificial ingredients. She was put on that diet while Todd was in the womb. And remember, this is back in the 60s. Marv didn't even know if he was having a boy or a girl at that point. As a baby, Todd in the crib, his crib was equipped with physical coordination toys. And by the time Todd could walk, he was lifting weights, stretching, and actually running drills. Todd Marinovich may be, Kev, the first human being that could bear crawl 40 yards before he could walk.
So think about this, folks. You have this clearly, his dad is a control freak, and that's probably a generous way of describing it. He's in the womb, and Marv Marinovich is already training this kid, gender unknown, to be a superhuman athlete. Now, one of the things that we know about individuals as adults is that they are framed and crafted and molded based on their childhood. If Marv Marinovich is already dominating and controlling every aspect of Todd's life before he even breaches, there's only one way for this story to go. And I can tell you it's not good. And let me tell you something, Marv didn't stop once Todd was born. It just became more focused, more dedicated, and Todd was going to be a superhuman athlete.
Well, and you said it right to start, Kev. Robo QB. That's the nickname they gave Marinovich, Todd Marinovich. And they gave it to him again because that's the way he was born and bred. He was bred like a robot. The kid in interview said, up until the point he went to college, never ate a Big Mac, never ate at McDonald's, never tasted an Oreo cookie. And he had no normal childhood, no birthday cake, never had birthday cake. When he would go to his friend's house, his dad and his mom would prepare which food he could eat to go to the house. Every nap, every meal, every workout, Marv Marinovich tracked it and was meticulous to make sure he followed it. And let's also be honest. We're sitting here in 2026 doing a podcast about Todd Marinovich. So on paper, it kind of worked, right? So
It
Todd
In a
Todd went to
demented
high
way,
school,
it did.
broke records, right? He broke records in high school, went to USC, top recruit in the nation. So from that aspect, it worked. But like you said, it broke him in way more ways than it ever helped him.
Yeah, and I think that's really really the core of this story is, whatever Dad Marv's intentions were, he did not understand the implications of what he was doing to his kid. Now, there's a broader question there. Did he even care? Or did he just want the feather in his cap to say that he bred his son to be a superstar?
Yeah, and I think early you can definitely make that argument. So let's talk a little bit about his dad. Let's talk about Marv Marinovich. So I did a little bit of a deep dive on him. So again, he's a football player, right? And the NFL calls him a pioneering sports scientist. And he is obviously, if not one of the most controversial parental figure in sports history. He really is.
Yeah, he's up there with like the Richard Williams, the Earl Woods. I mean, kind of a military dictator in a way.
Correct. Even more so, probably, even more so. So he was born in 1939, dedicated his whole life to the pursuit of what he called physical optimization, while he engineered Todd Marinovich, and he achieved it again. Going back, he achieved a lot of success. The extreme psychological toll it took on him actually shattered Todd's professional career, and quite honestly, it shattered his personal career. So a little bit about him, though. Before he had Todd, he was an elite athlete himself. He played at USC. He was actually drafted by the Oakland Raiders in 1962. Even though he was drafted by the Oakland Raiders, he only played one game with the Raiders. But early on, he learned kind of that, how to train, how to coach. He was very caught up in the optimization of the athlete. It's funny, as they interviewed Marv, one of the things they said about him was, or one of the things he said about himself was he thought he cut his career short because he trained so hard, almost like he broke his body down training. So that's how he became on the scientific end of trying to be the perfect trainer and find the perfect athlete, right? So it was a brief career. He recognized his training flaws. He was big on studying at the time Eastern Bloc sports. So all those Russians, right, that are born, and from the time you're born, Kev, you're going to be our shot putter.
So the
You're going
question
into the shot
becomes,
putting
yeah,
program.
so the question becomes, how early was he injecting Todd with steroids?
And I bet there's nothing you can find that says he did or he didn't. But come on, come on. He had workout equipment in Todd's crib, and he had his mom on a strict diet before Todd was even born.
Well, and here's the other part of it too, Jeff, is you got to think of the timing. This would have been in the 70s.
Absolutely.
Steroids were all over the place and they weren't legal and nobody knew what the long-term implications were. And being that this guy is molded by his belief that Eastern Bloc athletes and how they train and prepare is the standard by which somebody becomes a world-class athlete. Sorry, I think it's a valid question.
Absolutely. You realized he actually did exercises while Todd was in the crib as a baby.
Training hamstrings and muscles.
Yes,
It's
to
insane.
stretch and strengthen his hamstrings. Absolutely. It's incredible. They do give him credit. I will tell you, if you listen to trainers today, they give Marv Marinovich credit for some of his techniques. They say he was years ahead of his time. His approach worked perfectly on paper.
You can contribute, whatever you want to contribute. And if he contributed something in terms of how you train as an athlete, fine. But let's be serious about what he did. His kid was destroyed before he ever took a breath. And that's the cold, hard fact.
Yeah, they say from an early age he was isolated from his peers. So here he is, Todd Marinovich now. Okay. High school breaking records. I mean, he goes to a birthday party down the road. He can't even eat the food they bring, right? He has to have his own food. So if they're having hot dogs and cake and what, he can't have it. Mom and dad pack what he can eat. How do you think that went over in the neighborhood? Do you
Oh,
think it made
yeah.
him the most popular kid?
Oh, of
I
course
don't
it
think
did.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, he suffered a lot of trauma from that. He suffered a lot of trauma from that.
And
And
not surprisingly, at around this time, some of the cracks start to show.
and
He's
Todd
con
says it. Todd says it. Todd says his anxiety was through the roof, and he emotionally was a 5-year-old still. He had no way to cope. He didn't know how to cope with failure. He didn't know how to cope with anything outside of that rigid structure that Marv created for him.
right, and, inevitably now, I mean, let's be serious, every high school kid goes out and, probably does some stuff they shouldn't, but he starts to rebel against it a little bit. He's going out and drinking at post-game parties. He's smoking marijuana daily in high school. A group of friends, called their preschool ritual zero period. I mean, the cracks are starting to show themselves in more ways than one in his story by the time he's in high school. So he's breaking records, but he's also breaking down at the same time.
Yeah. Well, here's one too. I don't know if you read this. So this gets even before, because college is really when the wheels start to come off on the whole thing for Todd. But even in high school, to maximize his exposure, Marinovich transfers from, it's called Mater Dei High School to Capistrano Valley High School. And they did that to give him more exposure. And you hear about kids doing that all the time now. So again, going back to they were ahead of their time. I think that's garbage. I think you go to school where you live. I hate that. I hate that, which is a topic for another day. But they were so hard pressed on Todd going to this other school to get more attention for college and scholarships. His parents legally separated so they could claim a new primary address for him so he could go to Capistrano to finish high school.
This is insane. This is like totally, completely batshit crazy.
It's
So,
ridiculous.
so don't be shocked when we get into the struggles that Todd has later in life.
Absolutely. And he has a lot of struggles
Yep.
later in life. You go to college now. Now he's in college, right? And one of the things we were talking about before we started recording here, he fed Schembechler his last loss in his NCAA career in the Rose Bowl in 1990, which I
And
I didn't realize until we started doing the research for this.
and those who are listening, we're Michigan boys. We love our Wolverines. So that's a little sad side note here.
Michigan was number 3.
I
But
know.
again, that it was Bo Schembechler in a bowl game. Bo Schembechler never won any bowl games.
He was awful.
Unbelievably bad.
Oh, I know.
Unbelievably
I think he
bad.
was like 4-12 or some abysmal number like
Yeah.
that.
This one, you probably don't remember this game, Kev, but it was a defensive struggle. And quite honestly, Todd Marinovich drove USC down late in the game and won the game. He kind of won the game for him, but there was actually Bo Schembechler went crazy. And I think you can find this on YouTube. 4th and 2, Bo Schembechler, who is a really conservative coach, actually did a fake punt
Mm.
and we got 24 yards and the old holding call. On the punting team came out and Bo Schembechler came unglued. I mean, it was number 3 against number 12. Michigan was favored. So, but the funny thing with that is Don James is the coach of USC. Okay.
Yep.
So before that game, this is when the wheels started to come off. This was his freshman year. Marinovich missed the breakfast. He broke the team's curfew the night before and was purposely doing everything to tick off Don James, who is the head coach. And as I'm doing the research, despite that, he led a 75-yard game-winning drive to beat Michigan, right? You know who else was on that team?
Oh,
Another sad story on the defensive side and a great guy.
Junior Seau.
Yeah, Junior Seau.
Yep.
Junior Seau was on that team as well. Ricky Irvins, if you remember him, Marinovich drove him down the field. Ricky Irvins actually punched in the game-winning touchdown.
Yep.
Yeah, but it started there. It started there, and I think you might have some of the information on some of the things that happened to him off the field in college, but that's where it started.
Yeah. So his relationship with the head coach really deteriorates pretty significantly, quite frankly. At one point, Marinovich yells at the head coach on national TV during a loss in the 1990 Sun Bowl.
Yep. Yeah, so that's the next year. Yep.
As a general rule, not a good idea, especially doing it in front of cameras. And then a month after that, he's arrested for cocaine possession. So this is really the first big legal issue that he's facing. And as a result of that, he left USC early. He enters the NFL draft rather than having to face the fallout, which would have probably been a year-long suspension, something along those lines, because that's not a small thing. So if you look at his college career, it's not all that impressive. He does win that Rose Bowl against Michigan, but most Pac-10 teams won the Rose Bowl against Michigan when Bo
Yeah.
Schembechler was coaching.
Unfortunately, yeah, as Michigan fans, we saw that firsthand. Pretty much anybody that played Michigan in a bowl game beat Michigan.
Exactly. He finished his college career with 5,001 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, 25 interceptions. So not all that great. I mean,
Nope.
that's not a stat line that yells, "Whoa, look at this guy." It was 2 seasons, 62% completion percentage, very average even by the standards of that time.
Yeah, it was definitely average, but you saw the arm and you also saw the leadership and the athleticism that he did have. But again, the same things that were haunting him off the field with the drug abuse, the partying, the drinking, that was taking a toll with him on the field as well. Matter of fact, he tells this story. So 1991, first round draft pick, I think he was picked 24th
Yep.
by the Raiders at the time. And he says it. He was big into drinking and drugs by that point. And the night before the draft, he was out partying and consuming heavy drugs, which he says heavy drugs, it's heroin. I mean, it's not just marijuana. He's doing heroin. He's doing heavy drugs. And he was selected 24th. But you know what? He was worried he wasn't going to even make it there to go up on the stage because he had been partying so hard.
Yeah. So he's the second quarterback taken that year. He's actually drafted ahead of, do you know?
Brett Favre.
Brett Favre, Hall of
Yeah.
Famer.
And until the day Al Davis died, do you want to know what Al Davis says about Todd Marinovich? There is no doubt in my mind we picked the more talented quarterback. I mean, and again, he couldn't figure out he was trained to be Robo QB. Mentally, unfortunately he was mentally abused by his dad
Before he ever breathed.
so he never had a chance. And honestly, we talk about these all the time. We've done a few of these now, right? This was number 5. Sometimes it was hard because some of these guys that I actually liked before we did the episode, Chad Curtis being one, I actually hated the guy once we did the episode.
Yeah.
Todd Marinovich, I love the guy. I feel bad for him. I feel bad for him.
I'm in the same boat as you are, and I'll be totally transparent. When I see somebody that has issues like this, I'm a big believer in we make our own bed, right? But when you read about Todd Marinovich and the fact that he really never had a chance, what happened to him beginning at this point in his life was completely and utterly predictable and a complete result of his dad being a monster. I don't know how else to say it.
You're absolutely correct. And it's, I think sometimes too, and I hate to say this because sometimes I feel like I'm sticking up for the bad guy here a little bit, but even Mark, you also got to remember, let's just put it all in perspective. This wasn't 2026. We didn't know everything that we knew now. You know what I mean? This was in the 70s. And I think and I'm gonna end it with something that I found that I thought actually was pretty sweet on both sides. But I think he may have had good intentions, but what do they say? The road to hell is paved with good intention. And that's unfortunately what Marv Marinovich did to his son. He was there physically, taught him how to be a physical specimen, which he was, but he didn't teach him any coping mechanisms. And quite honestly, never gave him any room to fail. And it tore Marinovich apart.
Yeah, Marv raised a robot.
Robo QB. That's the perfect name for him.
And a robot does not have human emotion, doesn't have human connections, lacks all of the basic things that a human needs to survive. And we're getting to the point of the story where that starts to show itself.
Yeah, so let me go back. So, he only lasted 8 games in the NFL. Failed 3 drug tests in 2 years, which is basically what got him booted out of the NFL. His first start was the end of the 1991 season, and it was against the Kansas City Chiefs. He had a great day. Threw for over 250 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and they were coming right back. So the Raiders were a playoff team that year. They came right back and had to play Kansas City. After the fact, Kansas City admits we were playing a very vanilla, basic defense. And what we were trying to do was we were trying to bait Art Shell. At the time, let me go back a little bit. At the time, Jay Schrader was the starting quarterback for the Raiders. Offensively, they were struggling. The Raiders had already got it. They're in the playoffs. So the last game of the season, they're going to give Marinovich a try. Knowing the way it's set up, a Raiders win and a Chiefs loss, and they play each other again in the first round of the playoffs. The Chiefs kind of baited Art Shell in by not they didn't and nobody ever said they threw the game, but they said it was a very vanilla defense, very
Right.
predictable defense.
It's
Marinovich lit them up.
Yeah, and it's the last game of the year, right?
Yep.
So they winning that game does not fundamentally matter to the Chiefs at that point. What matters is the game next week, the first round of the playoffs. So what they did was they weren't going to show their hand in that game. That doesn't mean Marinovich didn't play a great game, because statistically he did.
Yep.
But the Chiefs played a dumbed down defense.
And Archel took the bait going into the playoffs. And Kev, I don't know if you remember this. You're younger than me. We watched this game. And it was a completely different game. Marinovich throws 4 interceptions, has a fumble. So 5 turnovers on the day. And again, they were still in the game. Kansas City ends up beating the Raiders 10-6. So it was a close game. And by the way, Todd Marinovich, the first rookie at that point to start a playoff game in the NFL. So he did hold that record, but his best game as a pro was already behind him. Everybody remembered that loss and his 5 turnovers. And now he had the weight of that he had to carry for the whole offseason going into the next season. And he's already got a drug and alcohol problem. He's got no coping mechanisms. And again, we could blame Marv. I mean, Todd's still making these decisions, but nobody was there to help him through that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So you go to 1992, the following season. He becomes a starter again after the Raiders opened 2-0 or 2. My mistake. Well, the team continues to struggle, and off the field, he was already starting to begin gaming the system to shield himself. He was using teammates' urine to beat drug tests. In one case, he got caught because a teammate who supplied it had been drinking heavily beforehand. That doesn't go very well.
I want to know who the teammate was. I didn't know Mickey Mantle played on the Raiders. I didn't.
But it's funny, we go back to the Vikings episode, right? And it's stupid athletes doing stupid things. Well, here's Todd Marinovich's stupid athlete doing stupid things. You might want to check that the urine you're stealing is not filled with alcohol.
Correct. Yeah, and again, that's a sign of desperation too, right?
Yeah,
he knows
fair
he's going to
point.
get popped.
Well,
He's
and
desperate.
here's the other thing too. You'd rather have alcohol in your urine than heroin and cocaine and whatever else he was doing.
Correct. Yep.
So he fails his 3rd drug test during 1993's training camp. He was suspended for the season and was cut by the Raiders, and he never played another NFL game. So Robo QB flames out in two full seasons.
Yeah, 8 games. I think he
And
only had
plays in 8 games.
Yeah, 8 regular season games. So go back, Kev, because you kind of said it, right? High school, he moved high schools, and he did break records in high school. 2 years at USC, which he was a good quarterback, right? And I'm talking statistically. I'm only talking about statistics. I'm not talking about potential. Only played 2 years, went to the NFL, only had 2 years and 8 games in. So again, you really see all this, Marv Marinovich in creating the perfect athlete. You see where he misses the boat. And quite honestly, at this point, Marv Marinovich actually starts to see where he's missing the boat too. because quite frankly, the wheels have come off of Todd Marinovich's life at this point.
Yeah, so he does what a lot of players do after an NFL career. He heads up to the CFL. He plays a little bit with the Winnipeg. What was
Yeah,
it?
they're the Blue
Oh,
Bombers.
yeah, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Lions.
Yeah,
Um,
which is funny because I don't know if you saw stats that were any more updated than mine, but in Winnipeg, don't think he played at all because I think he tore his knee up once he got up there, which
yeah,
again did not help him for the substance abuse issues
right.
either.
It only compounds it.
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, at this point, he flames out in the CFL. He takes a shot in the Arena Football League, which was kind of a hot thing during the mid '90s with the LA Avengers, and then he's pretty much done.
Yeah, I found a couple cool stories from that, Kev. Yeah, so 1994, he's with the Blue Bombers. 99, um, he tries to make a comeback in the CFL with the BC Lions. He's he basically can only make the practice squad. So he never plays really, from what I could find, I don't think he ever played a down in the CFL.
That's what I gathered too.
Yeah, I don't think he ever played it down. He did. So the 2020, which there's an interesting story there too, Kev. So I want to go back to that.
Sure.
But in 2017, he made a football comeback. It was a semi-pro team. It was called the SoCal Coyotes. Okay. And it was a home opener. And let me kind of read this for you. It was called the World Developmental Football League, the WDFL. And he originally joined this team as a volunteer assistant coach. So he tried to stay close to football. It's
Mhm.
one of those things. It's what he knows, right? It's what he's done his whole life. And even to this day, Todd Marinovich is still coaching and training kids in Hawaii. All
Yeah.
right. But like he said, he's trying to do it the right way now. Right. So he's an assistant coach there. And at this point, he's sober. Okay. So at this point, he's sober. He's doing good, which his post football career was a lot of that stretches of sobriety, stretches of doing well, and then kind of falling off the bandwagon. So their starting quarterback, a kid named Jacob Russell, suffers an injury. Marinovich stepped in, so he went from being the assistant coach to the quarterback and actually just tore the league up. And the team ended up winning 73-0. So I'll give you the stats. 19 for 28, 262 yards, 7 touchdowns, Kev. He threw 7 touchdowns in this game. But, of course, it's Todd Marinovich. He also had 2 interceptions. So, it's semi-pro. He had 2 interceptions. But that's what kind of got him, feeling the juices to come back and make that run with the LA Avengers in the Arena League. Now, go back to the Arena League.
Yeah. Go ahead.
A lot of guys that went to the Arena League as quarterbacks, ended up in the NFL. That's a great training league for quarterbacks. Quick decisions, tight windows you got to throw the ball into. And he really did well there as well for
Yeah.
a bit.
Yeah. So I want to go back to this UDFL deal.
Yep.
So the World Developmental Football League, right?
That's what it was called. Yeah.
So developmental implies these are young guys. Todd Marinovich is in his 40s.
He was in his 40s at the time.
Right, late 40s, in fact.
Yep.
My age.
Yep. Yes.
And he goes in there and, he torches and plays pretty good football. I mean, it's kind of a funny story, really.
Yeah. Well, the funniest part of that to me was 7 touchdowns, but he also threw 2 interceptions as well.
Yeah, it's an interesting stat line.
Yeah, he was a gunslinger. He was a gunslinger. Well, go back when he played in LA in the Arena League. You realize for a while he had the AFL record. He had 10 touchdown passes in a single game.
Well, which is interesting and is very impressive.
Yeah.
But for those who aren't familiar, Jeff, how big was the field in arena football?
It's a 50-yard field and it's 8-on-8. So the stats are going to be overblown. But at the time, 10 touchdowns, that was that was a record at the time. The other thing, kind of going back to what you talked about in 2017 when he played on the semi-pro team. So when he was on the AFL with the Avengers, he actually made the all rookie team. And at that point, he was 31 years old. So yeah, so it was, and we talked a little bit about some of his miscues. And I got, unfortunately, I mean, he could throw, he could sling it, right? But unfortunately, there was a little issue in the AFL as well. So again, he had been sober for a little bit, but there was a pregame disappearance followed by an arrest when he was with the LA Avengers.
It was in 2000.
Yeah, Marinovich failed, and it wasn't too long after the 10 touchdown game. And again, if you read into it, part of it was he had gotten a bonus at that time. I think some of the during his post NFL career, some of those patches where he was clean and sober, it may have been he couldn't afford to live the lifestyle and I think that's what was happening here. So the tipping point in his AFL career, Marinovich failed to show up for mandatory team meetings, sending team officials into a panic. Hours before kickoff, police located him in an arena parking lot. He was arrested on suspicion of heroin possession. He pled no contest to felony heroin possession. Jeez, oh, Pete, I can't talk. To avoid a 3-year prison sentence, he was forced into a strict year-long county drug court treatment program. So at that point, the Avengers kind of cut him loose at that point.
So he has his flame out with the Arena Football League. And this is really when the bad part of the story begins. He has moments after his NFL career that are not particularly good, but this is really the point where it just starts to circle the drain, as the old saying goes. So he flames out of the Arena Football League. In 2001, he's arrested for heroin possession. This is becoming a regular theme with him. Started with cocaine possession his last year in college. He has a heroin issue in the Arena Football League, and that runs him out of that league. In 2005, he's arrested again while on probation from the heroin charge in 2001. Then you get to October of 2007, and he pleads guilty to felony possession of methamphetamine and misdemeanor syringe possession and resisting arrest. Also arrested again that August for drug possession and resisting arrest. He's offered a suspended sentence in exchange for regular testing, therapy, and probation meetings. That's not a terribly bad penalty, really. You just got to stay clean. You just got to test, go to therapy, go to your probation meetings. It's not asking a whole lot. The big one for him really happens in August of 2016. He's found naked in a stranger's Irvine backyard trying to open a sliding glass door. He's in possession of methamphetamine, marijuana, and drug paraphernalia. He's sentenced to 90 days in jail, suspended, pending 6 months of rehab and 3 years probation. We talked about Sunny last week. She had 5 arrests in 32 days. In March of 2018, Todd is arrested twice within about 4 days. One arrest on March 19th, it was a same-day release, and another on March 23rd, and he was held until May 3rd. Both apparent probation-related violations tied to his ongoing addiction. By most tallies, roughly 9 separate times he's arrested by Orange County authorities alone, all connected to drug use, whether it was cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana over the span of 30 years. And one of the things that I kept thinking about as I was reading through this, we talked about Marv and we talked about how really at the end of the day, he created this mess. Now, Todd's an adult at this point and he has to own responsibility for the decisions he makes. But you cannot understate the role that Marv Marinovich played in setting his son up for this disaster. And I reflect back, and you've got something that you wanted to share a little bit that I think will be interesting. But I think about Marv. Does he ever go back to 1969, 1970, 71 when Todd's a little baby and he's already putting him through the ringer in preparation to become this superhuman athlete Does he ever reflect back and think, "God, I really fucked that up"?
It's interesting, and I wonder if he did. Kev, let me ask you this, and you're because right now, I was kind of looking at some YouTube videos. I'm gonna get back. I'm gonna answer your question there, but does it tell you anywhere how long Todd Marinovich has been clean at this point? Because from all reports, he's living in Hawaii and he's clean and sober.
As far as a date where he is said to have been clean, I have not seen that.
So I want to go back. So one of the things I watched was a short interview Todd Marinovich did with somebody. And quite honestly, it was probably shortly after 2017, after that stint with the semi-pro football team. And they asked him specifically, hey, and by the way, he's sitting in his car. So it's like a TMZ type thing, right? Almost like on a Zoom. And it was from 2017. And they ask him how long he's been clean and sober. And Todd says specifically, he says, honestly, I've been up for about 3 hours. He said, my best friend in rehab always talked about how he's been clean and sober for 9 years. He's been clean and sober for 9 years, 3 months, 4 days. And he said, my friend died of an overdose. So those 9 years didn't matter. It's day by day. So for him, I'm not surprised, and I couldn't find anything, but I'm not surprised that there isn't a date, because he said point blank in that interview, I get up and I take every day one day at a time, which I think is what you have to do when you're an addict. I think you have to do that. So interesting. I'll throw this at you. So Marv Marinovich dies December of 2020. Okay, so Todd Marinovich and his father Marv fully reconciled and became exceptionally close during the last 2 decades of Marv's life before his passing in December. While the public media, they painted Marv as a tyrannical sports villain, which quite honestly, we're painting him as a tyrannical sports villain. Todd spent a lot of his latter years adamantly defending his father's legacy, stating that they had healed the rift completely, because obviously there was a rift. They became best friends, shifting in the dynamics between the two. Once the suffocating pressure of Todd's professional football career ended, the intense trainer-athlete dynamic dissolved, and Todd began calling his father Marv, and it was a genuine term of affection and familiarity. And Marv's friends and his other teammates, that's what they called him. They called him Marv. So Todd quit calling him dad and just started calling him Marv. Todd says he gives him no blame. Despite the severe drug addiction and trauma Todd battled as a result of his upbringing, Todd publicly refused to blame Marv. And in an acclaimed ESPN documentary, Todd stated that as he grew older, he understood where his father was coming from and knew that Marv loved me when I didn't love myself. So I think later on, kind of going back to, right, it's 2026. We know a lot more than we did in 1979. I think Marv knew why Todd was having some of these problems. And as much as Marv could, he tried to help Todd through it. Now, again, just like Todd Marinovich says, hey, you take it one day at a time. Marv couldn't build a time machine and go back, but he did try and help Todd through a lot of those issues. One of the biggest things, and I'll kind of leave it here, and I'll turn it back over to you. In the late 2010s, Marv died from Alzheimer's. So he developed dementia and died. In the late 2010s, as the dementia and the Alzheimer's became worse, Todd stepped up as his primary caregiver. And he personally handled his father's relocation to care facilities, managing his medical needs, and just taking care of him. So as the diagnosis progressed, Marv frequently, he would forget Todd's name. However, Todd recalled that there was always a knowing. His dad always knew who he was. And when Todd would visit him, they'd share deep emotional moments. They'd laugh hysterically. And he said he always knew that Marv knew who he was, and Marv always looked forward to seeing him. Marinovich expressed immense gratitude that he suited up and showed up for his dad at the end of his life when he needed him. And I think now that we're in 2026, so this is 6 years ago now, and you haven't heard anything, I think that might have been the thing that really helped Todd heal some of those wounds and grow up. Let's hope. Because quite honestly, again, going back to some of the other episodes we done, Todd Marinovich never hurt anybody but himself. He never hurt anybody but himself. And
Yeah.
you can tell in interviews, he's genuinely a good guy that was just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things and one of the reasons, frankly, that we did this story. So, by all accounts, he's in a much better place. He's taken up painting as an outlet. He's worked as a private quarterback coach, and he's worked for a coach in the indoor football league. In August of last year, he released a memoir called Marinovich Outside the Lines in Football, Art, and Addiction. And in that book, he explicitly pushes back on the Marv ruined me narrative, insisting that he chose football and that the addiction is his own responsibility, not solely the product of his upbringing. And he's living in Hawaii. And as you mentioned, he seems, by all accounts, to be in a good space. And after the last two episodes with Chad Curtis and Sonny, we really wanted a story that ends better than it started. And this is one that happens. So, as we're walking through this story about Todd, we're very candid about Marv and the impact that he had on Todd. But I think the thing that Todd desperately needed in his life was to mature. And I think the way his relationship with Marv developed later in Marv's life up until his death shows that Todd finally did mature, that Todd was able to look past some of the flaws of Marv's and his upbringing. And to your point, I think once Todd was able to make amends with his dad and kind of move beyond that, and then his dad passed away, I think that was kind of the point in his life where it's okay now,
Yeah, for sure.
and I genuinely hope that his story continues to be a better story than it was for basically 30 years. He deserves it. And honestly, the way he talks about his dad now, his dad probably deserves it too.
It
Because the reality is the trap we often fall into is what's called the historian's fallacy, which is that we measure people in the past by the moral social standards of the present day. And that's not always right. We have to think about people and see them through the lens of the world they lived in. Now, we can certainly say certain things are not good and certain things were awful, and that Marv was in a lot of ways an overbearing jerk, but that's easy to say sitting here in 2026.
That's right. And, so going back, so Marv, he was a recognized trainer. The NFL recognized him as is kind of a pioneer in training athletes. Troy Polamalu, who is a Hall of Famer, was trained by Marv. The other big name in it, but he wasn't a football player, but BJ Penn, who was a UFC Hall of Famer and a multi-division champion, was also trained by Marv, but also ended up having issues later on in life as well, too. So that goes both ways. But I think Marv treated his son like it was one of his clients, right? He's supposed to train him and make him an NFL player. And he forgot to ask Todd, and he forgot to take on that father role as well for him.
Well, and I
So
think you hit on the big one. He forgot to be a father.
that's right. But later in life, I think when he saw Todd struggling, I think it was probably a realization to him. And I'll give them both a little credit in a tough after the NFL life for both of them. It would be real easy for Todd Marinovich to blame his dad. I could not find one sentence of that. Now, I didn't read the book, but doing the research, I could not find him ever blaming his dad. And quite honestly, from the sounds of it, Marv was there for him to try and help him get through his legal battles and try and get him help and get him straight. And now when Marv needed somebody to take care of him, guess who came back? Todd did. So they were loyal to each other. Doesn't mean I like what you said. What did you call that?
This
Historical?
it's the historian's fallacy.
I honestly, I don't think I've ever heard that before, Kev. I love that because that's exactly what Marv fell into, and probably to some extent that's what Todd fell into, right? We talked about it. Part of the reason why there's no shortage of people to do these podcasts on is guess what? Our society puts athletes on a pedestal. And if you're a really, really good athlete, you can get away with a lot of bullshit
Yeah.
that I can't get away with.
Too much.
Yeah, so he fell into that trap as well, but honestly, I'm glad Todd Marinovich is doing good. It sounds like he's doing good, and he even talks about the kids he trains now. He's not just training their arms, he's not just training them physically, he's helped training them emotionally, right? And quite honestly, that's what sports should be about anyway. That's what sports should all be about. He's a good guy. He's an artist, right? He's making a living. So I hope he keeps it on the straight and narrow. But honestly, it's easy to look at the rap sheet and, getting arrested naked in somebody's backyard. And yeah, there's a lot of idiocy in that. But he also found a way to get it together. So I
Yeah,
give him credit for that.
he found a way to get together and make amends with his dad. And I think when you look at that story in its totality, that's the best possible outcome.
That's right.
It is the proverbial the ending was better than the beginning.
Absolutely. Unless you're Al Davis. If you're Al Davis, you wish you would have took Brett Favre. But that's another story for another day, Kev.
Well, speaking of dads
That's-
and sons, Al Davis and his son Chucky,
He's got quite a hairdo.
that could be a story for another episode.
He's got quite a hairdo. Well, Brett Favre might be a story for another episode
You
too.
are
I'm pretty sure he is.
probably very likely to be correct in that statement. So that's it, folks. Episode 5, Todd Marinovich. It's quite a story from it wasn't even from his childhood. It was from his being in utero, for crying out loud.
That's right.
And all of the trials and the struggles and the difficulties that he's faced. And this is the first real story where it ends great. Todd seems to be in a really good spot in his life. He made amends with his father. I'm so glad we did this one because the last 2 episodes were so heavy, so sad, so difficult. This one ends on a positive. And yes, we will continue to do these types of stories because they're just as important as the big dumb athletes doing big dumb things. Appreciate you for listening. Jeff, send us out.
All right. Todd Marinovich, if you ever listen to this, we'd love to have you on. We'd love to interview you. But Kev,
Absolutely.
I appreciate you, buddy.
Yep. Love you, Jeff.
Love you too. Thanks, everybody.